And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Rupert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Rupert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Sea urchins hold a cultural and historical significance for many First Nations people in coastal regions, particularly in British Columbia, where they are harvested for food, social, and ceremonial purposes. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to year 2000 as Metlakatla prepares to defend its cultural resource from commercial fisheries.
The whole problem started Tuesday of last week when members of the Metlakatla band hit the waters surrounding their village to make it clear that they don't want to see a commercial harvest of sea urchins. According to Tsimshian Tribal Council President Bob Hill, it's a view that's shared by all of their communities on the north coast.
From our view, and especially from the view of Metlakatla and communities of Loch Williams and Kikatla, is that there isn't, according to our surveys and visible sighting, there isn't the biomass to conduct a green sea urchin fishery. And the department is adamant that there is, and that they've accepted a fishing plan signed off by the minister and are conducting a green sea urchin fishery in the areas of Hodgson's Reef, Tugwell Island, and Ryan Point. And in some instances, they move directly into the reserve.
The protest had ended up drawing the attention of the RCMP, who had received a call from Delta Reform MP John Cummins, warning them of a possible incident of civil unrest.
The police vessel Inkster was returning to Prince Rupert from Bella Bella, and at that time we contacted them and asked them to sail by and observe the situation, monitor the situation, and basically stand by and keep the peace if necessary. On their way back, we received a call, a complaint of a criminal offense. So we asked them to assist us in investigating the allegations of the criminal offense of uttering threats that we had received. They arrived on scene, proceeded with their investigation, and then left the area and returned to the home port of Prince Rupert.
I received a call from Metlakatla and said the Inkster was out here, so I immediately called a detachment here that I normally do, and we were faced with an instance such as this and other instances. And from this detachment here, apparently the MP, Mr. Cummins from Delta, had called this office here on behalf of Mr. Dick, and saying that he was harassed in a fishery, and it was, I guess, according to the RCMP today, it was normal for them to investigate the instance. But I'm a little concerned that a member of Parliament from Delta can give the detachment a telephone call and almost instantly the Inkster's on site to protect the fishermen, in this case the commercial harvester of green sea urchins, and without having the common courtesy to call Metlakatla as a community or to call this office to verify the complaint by Mr. Cummins.
Despite an investigation into the uttering of threats, the Tsimshian say the protest was nothing but peaceful.
We're not been harassing them or anything, we're staying our distance and doing whatever we figure is right. This is trying to protect our rights because they've taken just about everything away from us right now. And then if we sit back and allow them to do this conduct this fishery when we know there's not enough there for a fishery, and they still say there's more than enough to warrant a fishery here, so.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Rupert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Sea urchin roe, known as uni in Japanese cuisine, is a high-value seafood delicacy with a growing global market, particularly in Japan and increasingly in North and South America. The demand for uni has led to the development of both wild fisheries and aquaculture. Let us return to the archives to learn more about green sea urchins.
Green sea urchins, the shellfish at the center of this whole dispute, are a traditional food source of the Tsimshian. About once a month when the tides are good, they harvest the species along the shores near their villages. The day that we were out with band members from Metlakatla, they were using far from traditional methods to harvest, but the importance of this species to their culture was made very clear. Hereditary Chief Clarence Nelson is concerned that the migration of the urchins may be interrupted if they are harvested in the reefs at the mouth of the Prince Rupert Harbor.
If they talk about their migration route after they spawn in a place, we're hoping that what they found on the south Ottawa would migrate through the pass, so we'd have access to it on intertidal times. When the tide goes down, we can at least walk the beach again and pick what we need and enjoy it and eat it.
Nelson says preserving the urchin is also important in preserving a part of their cultural heritage.
We like the young generation to have some opportunity to try this and acquire a taste for it. That's what I'm afraid of losing. My grandchildren will never, get a chance to acquire the taste that I have for this delicacy.
The day after the protest, Tsimshian officials sat down with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the RCMP to discuss the situation. The Tsimshian made it quite clear that they don't believe green urchin populations are strong enough to handle commercial harvest, and the fishery should be shut down. They say if the DFO doesn't close it, they will.
We are in a process of trying to obtain an injunction against this fishery. We have suspended this injunction for the interim, having a look at, and are very hopeful that we will negotiate our way out of it with the Department of Fisheries and ourselves.
The DFO says it's willing to review the science behind the quota they've set.
We've set a quota of 12,400 pounds for Area 4, so we're prepared to review that again. We're going to definitely monitor the product that's coming off the grounds, interview the fishers, or the divers rather, and with that data we'll get a better handle on whether the scientific survey that was conducted in the area, whether it's valid.
As for closing the exploratory fishery, Anderson says that's not likely to happen.
We're not anticipating a closure at this time, but it could happen if the pattern of the urchins that we find out there are unusual, or some uncertainty creeps into exactly what we're doing. We could react very quickly. At this time, we anticipate the fishery continuing, and we'll be monitoring as it goes.
The Tsimshian Tribal Council says it's not just fighting the fishery at the local level, and is lobbying Federal Fisheries Minister Herb Dhaliwal to shut it down until further studies on urchin populations can be done.
In the interim, we're going to exercise our Aboriginal rights to the resource because we come first before the commercial sector. And I think the fact is we haven't had access to this resource for well over a decade.
They have absolutely overfished every species that we do have in our area, abalone and whatever, what have you. And we're coming into the salmon season, and they're even going to try to cut us back on our food fishery. So we're wondering why we're making all this noise here, and if we don't, we just roll over and allow them to do what they have done to us in the past. Where would we be today?
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The history of Canada Border Services Agency goes back to time well before Confederation. By the 1840s, every port entry was overseen by an officer known as a collector, who managed a team composed of officers to thwart smuggling, intercept smugglers, detect and seize smuggled goods. Let's return to the archives to see customs inspection in Prince Rupert.
The whole purpose of conducting searches on freighters is to look for contraband material like drugs, booze, weapons, and child pornography. These customs inspectors will crawl into some pretty tight spots in order to find what they're looking for. Part of that is what's called confined spaced entries. When choosing to do one, inspectors will search for things that look out of place, like this manhole cover on one of the ships we went aboard.
When we looked at the hatch cover, We noticed the paint was chipped and it had been repainted over. The paint was actually a different color. They had repainted over it. And that's a good indication to us that somebody's been inside before. And this particular hatch that we're looking at today is an area that normally people wouldn't go into. It's just an empty space. There's no reason they would go in to do work or anything. So because of the condition of the hatch cover, it's an interest to us. This is exactly what we're looking for. When we open up a space and we find cables and strings hanging, that's a method of concealment. They'll put stuff in there like drugs, and then they'll string it from the ceiling so it doesn't get damaged if the space fills with liquid. So we're off to a good start here.
Now it's time for the team to swing into action and gear up to enter the space between the two hulls. It takes a minimum of 4 people to do the entry.
And each person has a role to fill. We start with the attendant, who's the supervisor, who's responsible to make sure that all the checks have been done and is responsible in the event of an emergency or anything like that. The next person is the entrant. That's the officer that will actually go into the space and take a look for contraband inside. The next position is an emergency officer, and in the event that something happens to the entrant, the emergency officer is sent into the space to provide assistance until rescue services can arrive. The last position is communications, and the communications officer is responsible to make sure the lines are being fed into the space properly and does all the other work that has to be done.
One has to wonder what would drive somebody to stuff themselves into a small hole like this, but according to Inspector Roy Zach, it's not as hard as it looks.
Once you realize how dangerous it potentially can be, then it's actually fairly cool, because you don't know what you're going to get yourself into when you're down there. You don't know what you're going to run across. You have the basic idea: it's going to be dark, it's going to be dirty, it's going to be cold, it's going to be very slippery, toxic pockets of gas potentially. But the whole idea is you're down there looking for contraband.
Another type of search performed by the team is what's called a rummage search. We got to follow along to see one in action on this vessel tied up at Prince Rupert Grain.
What we refer to as a rummage is when we go on board with our officers, and we're just using hand tools and flashlights and mirrors, and we're getting into every nook and cranny on the vessel looking for things they may have hidden on board, and we can be looking anywhere on board for that.
A rummage search doesn't always take up a whole vessel. Sometimes inspectors will spend close to 8 hours going through a crowded room like this.
We'd move the ladders, move the piping, check the piping. We would open the tanks. We would uncoil the ropes. We'd move everything, check to make sure that there was no hollowed out spaces, check the fire extinguishers, move all the plywood, do the entire procedure. And then at the end of the day, we would know that at least in this area, there was nothing. There may be 10,000 pounds of hash and marijuana, the rest of the ship, but at least here, there's not. It's a hit and miss proposition, but that's unfortunately the odds that we're working against.
But that wasn't the focus of this particular search.
We're going to start in the steering gear room, and we're going to search that, and then we're going to move our way through the engine room. I need somebody to stay with us, and it can be you or it can be anybody you want, but just so we have somebody that can see what we're doing and so you know what we're doing, okay? The steering gear room we consider to be a higher risk spot than other places on the vessel. It's easily accessible by crew and even people visiting the vessel. Not a lot of traffic through here, so it's easy for somebody to get in and hide something and nobody to know about it.
You guys are being extra cautious about this vessel itself. Why?
Well, this vessel itself had some problems back in May. It came out of Colombia, and we consider South America a high-risk country. It hasn't been boarded since it was last year in Vancouver about 12 months ago. And at a previous port of call, they found some stowaways on board. And although they got the stowaways, perhaps the stowaways brought something on board that was left behind and never found. So, and that's what we're looking for today.
Besides crawling around the ship in impossibly tight spaces, the inspectors are also gathering evidence. This inspector is wiping down basically anything she can find with what are called ion swipes.
What we have is a machine called an ion scanner. It's basically a computer, and what we're doing is we're using cotton swabs to swipe surfaces, just like rubbing it with a rag, and in doing so they'll pick up traces of what was ever on the surface. And when we put them in this computer called the ion scanner, it will alarm for narcotics, cocaine, heroin, hash, cannabis, and by using that computer, it gives us an indication of whether or not drugs have ever been in contact with the area.
Even though nothing was found during this search, the ion swipes will help customs in the future. After tests are performed and if residues are found, the ship will be tagged for a search the next time it calls on Canada.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Jazz music originated in African American communities of New Orleans in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, emerging from a blend of blues, ragtime, and European musical influences. It is characterized by improvisation, swing, blues notes, complex chords, and polyrhythms. In this final segment of Open Connection, let us return to the archives with John Kaplan.
1, 2, 3, 4.
What an incredible opportunity for 84 students from across the north. They came to Smithers Secondary from Prince Rupert, Kitimat, 3 local schools, Prince George, and Quesnel to learn from some of BC's best jazz players.
Basically, what we're doing here is to immerse people in jazz improvisation for a couple of days, performing it for them and working in workshops here with them. And then a little bit of time spent on the instruments themselves, like technique, breath control, and fingering patterns and that kind of thing. But
I don't know, I've been to one like a jazz workshop before, and I don't know, I find it really interesting to have a bunch of other kids with you and not just by yourself with somebody. And plus, you don't really get an opportunity to work with guys like this very often.
Well, I've always enjoyed playing music, and coming to this workshop just gave me an opportunity to improve my improvisation for jazz and just have fun with music.
Listen to it a lot, and it'll sink in.
This was the 3rd year in a row a jazz workshop was held in Smithers, but this one was a little different. Usually 4 instructors come up from Malaspina College in Nanaimo, but this year organizers thought they'd double that to 8 instructors.
Listen.
We decided that we'd want to make smaller groups and more combos, so it's a more intimate setting as opposed to huge big bands. Again, the emphasis during this retreat is going to be more on improvisation as opposed to ensemble playing. We as band directors do a lot of ensemble playing anyways, so we figured that it was a good chance for students to learn how to improvise and learn all the secrets and little tricks of doing it properly.
Students of all skill levels, from beginner to advanced, took part in the 2-day workshop, but it wasn't just for high school students. A group from Chandler Park Middle School in Smithers also attended.
That would be a good opportunity to not play what the rest of the band is playing and to try something a little different.
Maybe for the beginners an interest, they just don't know what it's all about. They want to come out and try it and see if they're able to do it and if they enjoy the style of music. So most of the advanced students, again, have a love for jazz, so this is an opportunity for them to learn new things and to stretch themselves out a little bit musically.
And to show the students what it's really all about, the pros gave the neophytes a taste of some cool jazz improv in the Della Herman Theater. After that inspiring performance, the students were divided into 8 separate classes throughout the school to glean what they could from the masters.
Listen to it when you're doing your homework, when you're driving in the car, put a little tape in.
I love playing the saxophone, and I figured that this workshop would give me an opportunity to play, expand my knowledge of the saxophone, and be able to play with more people, to hear their styles and then learn from them.
Any kind of drumming helps. Like if you know any type of drumming, you can use some of it in any other type of drumming. Anything can. So yeah, it does help a little.
For another change this year, one of the 8 workshops focused solely on singing. Obviously, the students learn a lot from the professionals, but the instructors say they also take home a lot too.
I usually learn as much or more than the students, but I also love to see the lights come on in the students' face when they, just now, for instance, I presented a pattern of scales to use for playing the blues, and one or two of them went, oh yeah, this works.
The students paid $55 apiece for this rare opportunity, with the Bulkley Valley Band Boosters, the school board, and supporters kicking in more money and time to make this event happen.
Some of them are moms and dads, but it's mostly a big community effort. It's very successful, hugely successful. I want to congratulate the community of Smithers for doing this.
After 2 full days of jazz instruction and performing, many students have been inspired by what they've learned, and some have greatly improved their odds of becoming as good as the pros who taught them.
I actually want to go to Malaspina College and do their jazz program there and then eventually try to make a career out of music, yeah.
J.S. McMillan Fisheries is getting an $8.5 million restructuring loan and an $8 million loan guarantee from the NDP government. The company also had government help 3 years ago when it bought the Prince Rupert Fishermen's Co-op. Since then, it's had more frustrations with the banks.
The covenants and banking arrangements that we had established some years ago were very restrictive on us. They didn't allow us to make the changes as quickly as they need to be made in this industry, and you've seen that just in the case of just using BC Packers and Canadian Fish, where they just literally consolidated 2 plants, and it's just like that. Well, for us to do anything required us to get a whole bunch of people's approval, and it just became impossible for us to function.
The government and its Job Protection Commission have been working with J.S. McMillan on a long-term plan for the company, but financing became a serious stumbling block last week.
And in fact, I was convinced on last Thursday, that this plant was gone. And I, at that time, picked up the phone and phoned Mike Tarr of Northern Savings Credit Union. I said, Mike, we got a hell of a problem here, and we've got to find a solution.
With the credit union's intervention, the financing deal was arranged.
We haven't taken an unnecessary risk with the taxpayers' money. And in fact, in terms of a security, we think it's a good deal.
Thankful company officials say they can now plan for the long term. That means concentrating on parts of the industry they do best and looking at new products.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.